About 85% of global wealth is generated from cities, and so you would think that some type of data source would exist that investors, government agencies, and academic researchers can use to benchmark or to quantify cities, either from what policies different cities have put in place across a number of areas, or in terms of kind of continuous metrics for a city. So think of an investor. Today they often use these macroeconomic models. So if I'm investing in Israel, I might look at current account balances or trade surpluses, policy rates, etc. But I don't have any kind of data down to the urban level. So I might be able to look at a comparison of investments in Israel versus India versus Australia. But if I'm looking at really city level dynamics, Tel Aviv versus Mumbai versus Sydney, there's no data source to look at. If I'm a city government official and I'm trying to design a policy and I want to kind of take a classic econometric approach and analyze whether policies have caused certain outcomes when those policies have been put in place by cities, there's no data set I can look at to analyze that for cities. And as I found out in trying to write my own thesis at the McCord School of Public Policy at Georgetown, if you're wanting to do something like I was, which is to try to predict foreign direct investment into a city based on the policies that a city has, there's no data source you can use. So I ran into these frustrations and I figured the best solution is to make the data source exist. And so this venture, Civitas, to use transportation mobility as an example, will allow investors who might be investing in, for example, a ride-sharing company to compare how that ride-sharing company would do across different urban markets, whether those data sources consist of continuous indicators like kilometers of freeway, kilometers of bike share lanes, traffic density, or kind of policy rates. Do they have ride-sharing partnerships to cover areas that public transport doesn't reach, for example? For city governments, let's say you're trying to evaluate whether a shared bike system works, and you want to look at how shared bike systems have impacted emissions or citizen health in cities, and you want to design your policy accordingly. There's no data source to do that, and this would allow city government officials to do that. Or if you're an academic and you want to look at something like the transportation of public bus stops or public transportation and how that correlates with poverty rates. Collecting information on distance between public bus stops, on poverty across cities, will allow you to better address that and come away with a causal inference that you could then help advise governments on. So in terms of how do I take data and research, something that sounds kind of rather academic, and make it into an actual profitable business model, it's going to be a tiered data subscription model. So a lot of the motivation for this came from Michael Bloomberg identifying in the 1980s that there was this huge gap in financial information, right? And so Wall Street was willing to pay for high quality, standardized, seamless, integrated information sources in the same way that I hope investors, businesses, and academic and research institutions will here. So at the basic level, you're just providing the data collected on cities that exist now. So there's plenty of raw data out there that just hasn't been integrated, hasn't been standardized, and hasn't been structured into kind of a well-designed portal that stakeholders can use. And at this basic level, the key here is that it's essentially free, and the hope is that this will allow the customers to develop use cases that could then help as kind of marketing for the tool and its value itself.
So the basic plan is free.
Basic plan is free, exactly. At the second level, you have these public indicators data that are collected at the national and federal level, as well as basic analytics and data visualizations. So there's a number of kind of portals out there that take raw data and also provide basic analytics and data visualizations. I worked for Arlington Economic Development. We do a lot of real estate structured the Amazon HQ2 bid. And one of the portals we use a lot is called CoStar. I'm not sure if you guys have used it before. It's a lot of manual collation on everything related to the buildings we see around us. And they also provide basic analytics and data visualization, so you can kind of look at, okay, occupancy rates have changed. Once Amazon HQ2 comes, there must be a lot of other tech companies coming in alongside with that.